Welcome to Stories from the Seats. I am James Larken Smith. You notice I have a radio voice. That's because I was in radio for a number of years. Matter of fact, if you call the church, I am the voice of Alamo Heights United Methodist Church right now. I had the privilege of doing the phone prompts for the church, and it was a blessing to be able to do that. But I've lived in San Antonio for 3 years. I moved here from Houston, where I lived for about 40 years. And it's been a blessing moving here. And one of the first things that we began to have a challenge, me and my wife, her name is Lisa, and we were attending a church downtown, and we started having parking problem. It was a good church, but the parking was kind of an issue there. My wife and I, as I'll explain, are both wheelchair bound. And so then our disability van broke, and it was kind of like, we need to find a place that's a little closer. And of course, we live within a block of the church here. So we visited, and we found our home. And we've been very blessed. We've been attending here for about 2 years, and God has allowed us to be able to do certain things here that I've enjoyed being a part of the volunteer care ministry team, working with Pastor Linda. And one of the things we do is we go to retirement homes and nursing facilities in the vicinity of the church here. Well, I want to kind of share with you where my life kind of been an emphasis on turning points in your life that have helped you to either grow closer to the Lord or encourage other folks in that area. You know, we all have big events in our lives. We get married, we have a good career, things of that nature. And there's certain points in our life that kind of are those pivotal moments. And for me, a pivotal moment was a tough one. 20 years ago, I was in a church. I was sitting at a piano. I just finished leading worship. And right when I finished leading worship, I noticed that my neck was feeling a little unusual. And all of a sudden, my left arm started going limp. Couldn't move it. So I take my right arm, say something's wrong, and I say, Pastor, I'm really sorry to bother you right now, but something is not right. And all those folks gathered around me real fast, and they spent like less than a minute and prayed for me. And Pastor Schutz got me in his car and personally drove me to the hospital. And I remember going in. They got me in pretty fast. They can tell stroke patients pretty easy because I was having some of the typical signs. And by the time that we got there, my left leg had gone limp also. And so they got me back there, and they were attempting to get my shirt off. I had this brand new shirt, and that's the last thing I remember. Now, they tell me I was aware a little bit later on, but what had happened was I had a major seizure. And the next thing I remember is waking up a week later, having found out that I'd had brain surgery, that I had this thing called, this long name, I won't try to spell it, it's called an arterial venous malformation. We call it AVM. Those of us in that community call it an AVM, because who wants to say arterial venous malformation 20 times? But generally, when you have one of these, and it's basically the veins in your brain or other parts of your body, instead of being straight, they're clumped up. And it's just like a water hose. When that water hose gets limped up a little bit, it breaks and it bursts. Basically, what happened was not only did I have the AVM, but because of the pressure, I had an aneurysm the size of a plum. And folks, I should not be here right now. The percentage of the fact of whether I should be here is like 0.0 something percent, because I had the trifecta. I had the AVM that caused the aneurysm, the burst, and then had the stroke. And then the fact that I could have been in my car driving home when this happened, not at church or not around some other folks. And the fact that they chose not to call an ambulance and wait, but to get me right there, very well saved my life. And when I was going through this, what I want to share with you is, as I went through this, one of the opportunities we have is to encourage other people. And I would not have gone through this if not for the encouragement of other people in this situation. As Christians, we are shown so often in Scripture the fact that we are to be the vessels of blessings and faith for people. And I was fortunate to have that in my life. But I want to share a few of the things that happened and the fact of people made an impact and the possibility of you doing the same thing for others. First off, I was in a coma for a week's time. And I wasn't sure at the time whether this was in my brain or this actually happened. One of the things they do when you have a stroke and you're recovering from a coma is they want to run like a news station or something of that nature. So they had CNN in the background a lot. And I remember seeing Larry King come up, and he was interviewing a lady by the name of Joni Eareckson Tada. Joni was a lady that at age 17 was in a severe accident and became paralyzed from the neck down. And through this, at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I understood that my left arm wasn't working, my left leg wasn't working. I'm even trying to position myself in the bed. I'm just learning the fact that half of my body is paralyzed. But here comes this lady on TV with Larry King. What are the chances? Larry could have been interviewing anybody at that time, but that's who he was interviewing. And I saw this, and I was familiar with her. Actually, my mom had read her book early, and when I was young, I remember hearing about her testimony, about how she didn't give up, how God allowed her to paint and share her testimony testimony of how she had gotten through that and how not only was she able to get through it, but she was able to share the love of Jesus with many, many people and does that to this day. And through that, I got the assurance that I was going to get through this. Here's someone from the neck down that's paralyzed. I still have my right side. And then here's a cool story. It was a man I worked with. His name was Ralph Kowalik. I was a paint chemist. I worked for ExxonMobil, and Ralph Kowalik was one of the folks that I worked with. He was a really good man. And so Ralph and his wife and his daughter named Catherine came to visit me in the hospital. This was about a week after my surgery. I was, finally starting to get my senses a little bit. But Catherine was supposed to go on a little trip, and she had been saving some money that she had to go on this trip. But I'd met Catherine a number of times. She had heard my album that I'd made. I'd play trumpet, keyboard, sing, and I made an album of gospel music. This album came out, I gave a copy to her, and she really loved it. And then every time that I would see Catherine was at a wedding, like of someone that we worked with or something else. She always saw me in a suit with a tie on. Well, Catherine had decided she wanted to take her money and go to a Build-A-Bear store and bring this to me. I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. And the little bear, she called it James Bear. And James Bear was dressed with a little vest, a little tie, and a pair of shorts. Well, at the time, I also had a lot of back pain. And so they were giving me a lot of pain medication, but they were getting ready to transfer me to the rehabilitation hospital, and they needed to start taking me off of these medications. And as many of you know, if you've been on pain medication for a while, it's real tough coming off of it. And so that bear, I tell folks, got me through the worst night of my life. I woke up the next morning, and what I remember is holding that bear, clutching it, writhing and crying in pain. And that young lady who thought so much to buy me that bear, it would seem to an adult, why do you need a stuffed animal? But that bear got me through the toughest night of my life. What also got me through a tough day was the visit of a very special man in my life. Pastor Bill Sparks and his wife, Jerry, were special to me during my high school years. I was having a real rough day. Pastor Sparks had retired and they moved to Dallas, but I was having a horribly rough day in my rehabilitation. I was having a hard time doing what they asked me to do. I was having pain in my back and my bottom from having to sit in a wheelchair and not being able to stand like you normally would. And I remember just sitting there frustrated. I'm not going to get through this. It ain't going to work. And wouldn't you know what happened? Brother Sparks and another man walked in. And I was like a little kid bawling like a baby. But here, just to visit, him taking the time to visit, he encouraged me, said, James, don't give up. You can do this, James. I've seen folks that have gone through this and worse. And I know your spirit. I've known you through the years. And I know that you're going to get through this. Now, I want to share 3 quick things with you that I think I've learned through this, and I want to encourage you. Those of you that are listening are probably in one or two categories. You're either somebody that might need encouraging. You might be going through a challenge in your life right now. Maybe you've been through a challenge. Maybe you know someone that's going through a challenge. And then you're someone that has the ability to be that encourager, that person that can help someone. This day and age is so easy to say a negative word to somebody. We hear negative things in the news and such, but the ability of what a positive word can do for someone. It can just be encouraging for what they're going through. You can say things to people. You can share your story with others, just like this podcast has allowed me to be able to do today. Surround yourself with other good people. Our church, Alamo Heights United Methodist Church, if you're in the San Antonio area, what a great place to be able to do that. No matter what it is, you have the ability to encourage, just like Catherine did for me, just like Brother Sparks did, just like the testimony of Joni Erickson Tata did in my life. And lastly, I want to say this. All of you out there are the vehicles God uses to help others when they are in need. Be that vehicle. Be that encourager.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Stories from the Seats. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. If you have a story that you think would be great on the podcast, email us at podcasts@ahumc.org. That's podcasts@ahumc.org. To learn more about who we are, visit our website ahumc.org anytime. Any related links are also in this episode's show notes. Again, thank you so much for being a listener. We truly appreciate your time.